Hello, comrades. Hope you're all doing well. This is Joseph Ryan Banks, and I've got another video for you today. I've got my script right here. This is just how I'm going to read it. If you guys don't like it, then let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think. Americans, there is something we need to talk about. The Democrats and Republicans are not as different as many liberals and conservatives like to make you think. Kamala Harris is a brazen supporter of the genocide in Gaza. She contradicts herself in one breath, stating that, quote, President Biden and I are working around the clock because now is the time to get a hostage deal and ceasefire done, unquote. Then in the very next stated in her DNC speech that she will, quote, always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, unquote. And she will, quote, always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself, unquote. Now, what does this mean? It means they will only find an acceptable ceasefire once every Palestinian is dead. It means they will continue to arm Israel and directly fund the genocide of the Palestinians. The Biden administration has approved sending another $20 billion worth of arms to Israel. She will do everything in her power to continue the current program of funding genocide and putting Israeli lives above the men and women and children being massacred, slaughtered, and bombed for land seizure. She does not represent the working class interests. No matter what superficial, pleasant thing she puts in her platform, which I will not waste my time reciting here, because it ultimately does not matter what she will do for the labor aristocracy of the United States. What matters is how she will continue the imperialist project of America when she comes to power. Liberals will lurch to the right whenever there is an even slightly perceived threat to their material comforts. Liberal class interests align with capitalist class interests, which will swing with either the Democrats or Republicans because it has very little material difference. The Democratic Party represents the dominant class interests, that being the bourgeoisie, along with the Republicans. So voting for either one will only do one thing. It will give your personal seal of approval for the genocidal policies of the United States and its imperial colony of Israel. It will provide no resistance to the cycle of abuse of foreign countries and the abuse of workers in the United States. Kamala will continue the dominant strategy of endless proxy wars with other competing imperialist powers such as Russia or China. If you support the Democratic Party or the Republican Party at this point, then you have fully committed yourself to pulling the wool over your eyes so as not to see the very clear fascism in the United States has become so familiar with. We do not have any democratic powers as a working class in this country, and supporting those in power currently under the guise of supporting your LGBT rights or anything of the sort is complete garbage. Voting within the American electoral system has no material impact on what the government does with taxpayer funding. The very fact that we have a popular vote versus an electoral vote means that our vote does not matter. Capitalists are the ones who have the power and have their interests represented within the system. Us normal everyday people, workers, poor people, voting within an American system only maintains the status quo, and at worst pushes the government further and further to the right because they have absolutely no contest from true working class left political representation. The liberal bourgeois institution of party democracy does not ensure that the workers are represented in any meaningful form. I hate feeling like I'm repeating myself, but honestly, it cannot be stressed enough that American electoral politics are completely screwed at this point. Within the imperial core, the left has been utterly smashed. It is limp in the face of a destruction of a planet and the murder of hundreds of thousands of brown people across the world due to our government's genocidal policies. It is pure theater. Capital controls where the bombs go. Capital controls where foreign investment goes. Capital dictates what wars the states should wage for their sake. This is the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie that we are living under and must come to terms with. It is what we must understand as a revolutionary class, the working class, that we have to fight against this in every possible way. Not just doing your own thing in an anarchist, individualistic way by destroying property, though it is necessary to clog the arteries of capitalism, sure, but we must organize. We have to organize a full-hearted communist opposition to the actions of the government. We must not allow our brothers and sisters and NB siblings to fall for the rhetoric of the Democratic Party. But really, who am I kidding? The labor aristocracy has become so completely apparent in the last 10 months of the ongoing Palestinian genocide. And for those who are unaware of the term, labor aristocracy comes from a Marxist-Leninist concept that the workers in advanced capitalist countries are ostensibly another class, that they lack any meaningful proletarian consciousness, that they have different class interests to the workers of internationally exploited third world countries. Third world countries referring to countries in the global south, economically exploited by the global north and Western imperialist regimes. So liberals and conservatives and MAGA heads in America constitute the labor aristocracy. Liberals in America could give less than two craps about what happens to people, men, women, and children in these countries, because their oppression by their states that are friendly to Western capital gives direct benefits to their material conditions. Modern imperialist capitalism offers boons to those who are living in a relative comfort compared to the poorest peoples of the world. And this level of comfort is not immediately threatened when a Democrat comes to power, so there's no incentive to fight back against them. Actual leftists in the United States are heavily suppressed for their views. Public protests are essentially against the law because the police will come and crack down on protesters and randomly attack them and arrest them for even peacefully organizing. Now, what I am going to say may upset some people, and frankly, I don't care. Peaceful protest gets us nowhere in the current historical material context of the advanced stage of necrotic American capitalism. In fact, it only hampers the labor movement. When our country is actively genociding third world people for profits and using police brutality to take down peaceful protesters and people who actually care about what's going on, there is no reason to peacefully protest anymore. This means that violent resistance is necessary. This should be a massive wake-up call for the American left that we need to change our tactics, that we must start organizing real, actual workers' groups, communist parties, not fall to the sectarian revisionism nonsense of Trotskyists, and actually wrap our heads around what Marxist-Leninism has to offer, and how it applies to our modern circumstances here in 2024. Now, some of you will say that Lenin advocated for participating in democratic elections, and that a push for violent resistance is not something we need at this point in time. But he was in fact referring to participating where there is a substantial workers' labor party at that point in time. There is no such thing in our current United States electoral conditions. We have two bourgeois parties that collectively represent the interests of the capitalist class. That means that we must seek organizations outside the system itself. We must organize amongst ourselves as workers and as revolutionaries. Kamala Harris is an example of a minority coming to power by simply continuing the conditions of oppression to further white supremacy, to further fascism and imperialism. Because as long as they peddle the same American exceptionalist rhetoric, they will get a bigger piece of the pie that the capitalist class reaps from the toils of its laborers. It's a similar operation to Obama in 2008, as his identity became more important to the people than the economic and foreign policy as the office of president. They can be in positions of power as long as they further Western imperialism in its entirety. And I've seen people say online that we should still give them a chance, that we're being too harsh on them and should have responsible, reasonable expectations for them, since this is America and America is best and whatever the f*** else they want to say. This is liberalism making excuses to maintain their material and political comfort. Their lurch to the right is ever more visible and blatant with every passing election. This is not the position that Marxists should take. Marxists should instead be organizing and analyzing the material conditions of the present political, economic, and social situation in the United States so that we can rally the masses behind a proper socialist movement. The working class has seen massive attacks in the United States, yet not enough to feel the fire beneath them, to feel the water boiling them alive. If you think I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. If you think that you have the answers and that I'm completely out of my gourd with all of what I'm saying, then let me know in the comments. If you like what I do, subscribe. If you don't, then I don't care.